Hello everybody and welcome to the new video of Python tutorials for beginners series. In this video we will be covering what are lists, how are they useful, and we will also cover some of the most useful list methods in Python. In Python, lists are the most common way of storing your data. So imagine you had many values you wanted to store, and for each value you didn't want to create a new variable. So let's just say we have our num1 equals to 5, num2 equals to 17, and num3 equals to 2. So instead of creating different variables for each of these data, we could have just created a list, and this list variable would have square brackets, meaning it is a list and it will contain value. And instead of creating different variables like that, let's just store each of the values inside this list. And right now, we have created the most simple list we could create, and we have stored some of our values inside this list. And this is why lists are called data structures, which essentially tells us that they're an organized way of keeping your data together. There are many other data structures in Python as well, and we will be covering some of them in the upcoming videos. But lists are definitely the most common and most useful one, and you will be using lists in almost each of the programs you will be writing. Also, despite any other language, Python does not restrain you from having a single type in each of the values in a list. So what I mean by this is all of these values here are integers, but instead we could have done a text as well, and we would still be able to include this string value inside a list that already had some integers. So there are no strict types and lists in Python, and you can be flexible by adding any type of value you want inside the list. Okay, now that we have created our list and stored our values in a data structure like this, you might be wondering how will this be helpful and what are the use cases of lists? Before getting started with list methods in Python, let's print the type of this lst variable and see what type it is of, and hopefully we will be seeing list. So let's run the code and see the output. As we're seeing, the variable is of type list. And lists are definitely the most commonly used data structure in Python, and every beginner should learn about it. So one of the use cases of lists are you can directly access the elements of lists by a method called indexing. And let's see how this indexing is working. So first of all, we will be writing lst as it's a variable name. Then we will type in the square brackets, just like we did while we are creating our lists here. And then we will type in the index number we want to access. So this index number is starting from 0, and basically what 0 means is the first element inside the list. As you might already be familiar with, in programming, indexing numbers start from 0, so 0 will be the first element here, 1 will be the second element, and 2 will be the last element in this list variable here. So let's run the code and see what we were able to access by the square brackets and the 0 inside. And okay, now we are able to see our output is 5, which is exactly the first element of our list variable here. So if we instead wanted to access the last element here, or the third element, this one, we would write 2 here, which would mean the third element, and then we run the code again. We would now be accessing this text value inside our list. What we can also do is, instead of accessing each element one by one like we did here, we can create a loop, as we have learned in the previous video. So let's just create a full loop for now. And for each element inside the list, so for, let's say, element in lst, and this basically means we will be looping through this list variable here, and then each iteration value will be called element. And these will basically be for the first element 5, then 17, then text. So when we print element here in the for loop, we will run this code and see the output 5, 17, and text consecutively. And lists offer the Python developers much more than just being suitable with for loops or any loops in general. They have great methods, and these methods make it so efficient to use a list. So let's actually talk a little about some of the most popular ones in Python. And as we have already previously talked about indexing, let's just use let's take a look at another method related to indexing. And let's create a variable called index. And for this, we will call the index method of list. And so let's call it. And inside this method, we will give any value that we want to know the index of inside this list. So this could be, let's say, 17. And when we print what the index is, we will be facing 1. Because, as we have previously talked about, the list's index are starting from 0. And as this one's index is 0, 17's index will be 1. And this index method will basically return index of the given value. And when we run the code, we are seeing that the output is exactly 1. And if we gave it the value 5, we would be getting the index 0. And that's confirmed now. And of course, there's much more to it than just indexing lists. Obviously, we would like to add some elements inside the list. And there are a couple ways to add new elements inside the list. So let me remove this line. And one of the methods for adding an element is called append. So this append method basically adds a new element at the end of the list. So if we said, let's add the false value for now, and please don't forget this, you can add any type of data type inside the list variable here. It can be a Boolean value, it can be a string value, a number, it doesn't matter. In Python, you can add any data type inside the list. And let's print the new list in order to see how it looks like after we've appended this value. And obviously, as this was our initial list, when we append the value false, the new list will exactly look like this. But appending only works for adding a new element at the end of the list. What if we wanted to insert an element in between the values? So for that, we have a method called insert. And this insert method takes two parameters, meaning we will have to pass in two values here. So the first one will be the index we want to insert this value into. And by 1, we mean as this was our 0th element, as this element's index was 0, the element index 1 will be here, something in between. And the 17 will have the index 2 after this false value is inserted. So let's print the new version of our list. And as we are able to see, the false value is here inside the index 1. Now that we have covered, let's also take a look at how to remove any elements from the list we have. And actually, removing elements is as easy as adding new elements. So for now, let's take a look at how to remove the last element of a list. And for removing the last element, we have a method called pop. And by using this pop method, we can also get the value of what was removed. So let's say removed, and let's store this in a variable. And okay, now we're actually popping the last element. Now we're using the pop method for the last element, and as it's getting removed from the list, it is actually stored into a variable called removed. So in addition to printing the new version of list, let's also print the removed value, and let's see what happened here. As you can see, the text value was removed from the list, and as you can see, the text value here was removed from the list, and it was stored into the removed variable as it was returned from the pop method here. And when we printed it below here, it got printed here right below the list we had here. And again, you might not want to remove the last element of a list. You might just want to remove a value you want to remove. So for that, we have remove method. So let's just use the remove method. And for this, we can pass any value we want. So let's say we want to remove 17 here. And when we remove this 17 value from the list, you can probably guess what the output will look like. But let's run the code anyways. And as you can see, the output list will not have 17 inside. It will only have 5 and text values we have specified above. And in addition to these basic and most commonly used methods for lists in Python, I also wanted to show you a couple bonus methods that will help you increase your productivity while you're coding as well. So, first method I'm going to be talking about is called extend. And this extend method can help you combine two lists into a single one. So let me show what I mean here. Let's create a variable called lst2, and let's store variables 2 and 0.6, and we will make lst extend, as we've said. The method name is extend, and this lst list here above will actually extend this list. And let's see what the output is. But basically, we will be extending this list by adding each of these values inside this list at the end of the original list we are calling the method from. And let's print the lst, the original list. And when we run the code, we see the output. The first three values are just like our original list, and we've extended these by the values of the new list we've extended the first list by. Now for the next couple methods I am about to show, you would probably want all your elements to be numbers inside your list. So let me adjust that all the values are numbers in the list, and you will understand why you want all of them numbers once we're done. So okay, now that I've created the list which has all their values as numbers, now we will be able to sort and reverse this list by using the methods called sort and reverse. Let's start by sorting the list. And sort basically means putting each of the elements in an order, which goes from the lowest number inside the list to the highest number in the list in a numerical order. And in order to see how this worked, let's run the code. And as you're able to see, the 0.6 was the lowest number inside the whole list when it came in the first place, and the numbers keep increasing as we go through the largest number inside the list, which is 24. That's present here. And just to prove our point, if we put a negative number at the end, let's say negative 15, and run the code again, this would be directed in the beginning right away, and as we see, it's here in the beginning. Because it's a negative number, it's the smallest value in the list. Also, we have a method called reverse. And this method will basically just reverse the order in which they are originally in. So as you've seen, so here the negative 15 is at the end, and now it will be at the beginning, and the 7 is in the second place from the end, and in the reverse version it will be in the second place from the beginning. And I think you got the point. And let me run the code and see the output. And here, this output list is the exact reverse version of what you see here. And here, what you could do is first maybe sort the list, right? And when the list is sorted, you could reverse the whole sorted list so that the values in this list would go from the largest number possible to the smallest number in a decreasing order inside this output list. And let's see the output here. And as we can see now, it's going from 24, the largest number in the list, to negative 15, the smallest number in the list. And also, just to add a quick point, as you might remember, we had a function called len, which returned the number of elements in a variable. And we've covered this function in strings topic. So we can call this len function by writing len and then opening and closing brackets. And for lists, if we pass in a list variable inside this len function, this len will return the number of elements inside the list. So let's run the code and get the output 7. I just wanted to show you so that you know the len function isn't only used for strings, because in the previous video we only used it for strings. The len function could be used for anything that you're able to iterate. And as we've seen, we were able to iterate over list using a for loop, just like we were able to do it with a string. So I hope that doesn't confuse you. And these were all you need to know about lists as a beginner in Python. If you found this video helpful, please leave a like and share it with your friends. And don't forget to subscribe for upcoming Python content. Thank you for watching until the end of the video, and I hope to see you in the next one.